The following presentation is brought to you by kmmedia.pro. Please visit kmmedia.pro for more information. Now stay right where you are as we present... Welcome to Positive Talk Radio, evolving ideas, one conversation at a time. Great guests, dynamic stories and interviews, plus new thoughts on a wide range of topics and concepts. I hope that you'll hang with me, Kevin McDonald, my friends, and of course, you. As together we work to understand why we are all here and what we can do to make our world a better place for all of us. To be happy, be kind, and live in peace together. Yep, that's Positive Talk Radio. And welcome to Friday. It's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. TGIF, I think, is the appropriate way to say it. And we've got a great show for you today. We've got a wonderful author, and she's got a very timely book out. And we're going to talk a great deal about that. And we might even slip in a little not politics, but economics a little bit. But Nathan, how are you today, sir?
Good afternoon, Kevin. And I wish I could go to a TGI Fridays right now, but we don't have those over here. So the best way to do it is spend it on Positive Talk Radio. I don't think I've ever done that before. Hit the mic and send it flying.
He's excited to be here, I can tell. And no, TGI Fridays is everywhere in the world except for here. So I don't know why that is, but in the South and in the Midwest, they are all over the place. And I think there are even some in St. Louis. And I'll ask Leah Rachel, who is our guest today, but she is a professor at a university in St. Louis, and she also is a professor of economics. She's also an author. She's got a couple of books. By the way, Nathan, I love the idea. Now, not this book, but the book before that was I think it's the Other Shakespeare. And it's a great novel about what would have happened if Shakespeare was a woman. Got an opinion?
Just trying to think of all the, fancy old English words that'll come out.
Thy could not has been the female gender of the persuasion because they were in the kitchen cooking. So anyway, she wrote that book, but she's also got a very timely book out, and it's a novel, but it's kind of a personal novel. So, Leah, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Thanks for having me. And let me just say that actually TGI, they are in St. Louis, and it is actually my husband's favorite restaurant. And so you just now made it clear that we can never move to Seattle, I'm sad to say.
Yes, that's all right. If you look at traffic, there's enough of us here already. So if you really like TGI Fridays, move to St. Louis.
Or open one here. We were talking about economics, so it might be a good economic opportunity. Open up TGI Fridays here.
Exactly. It's Friday, and that means that the stock market is open, and we have a professor of economics here, so I have to touch on it a little bit, because the stock market, sadly, is going down.
Yes.
Why?
Well, so let me say I prefer to talk about Shakespeare, if that's okay. So yes, I am a professor of economics, but as I say to many people, I actually don't focus on the stock market. I'm an environmental economist. So I can tell you a lot about pollution and clean water and energy resources. In general, I mean, I guess I know a little bit more about the stock market because, I took some of those classes. I would say that everybody's freaking out, and a lot of times fear and uncertainty, those are the two big factors that can lead to volatility in stock markets going crazy. And I would say we've got both of those right now. People are uncertain what the Fed exactly is going to do, how far they're going to have to raise rates, and they're fearful that means unemployment's going to go up, and we're just at a precipice of not really knowing what's happening, and it's showing itself in all that down word motion.
So I've been told that just behave yourself and don't panic, because whenever it goes down, it always comes back up.
Yeah, hopefully you've got enough time. Hopefully, whatever money you have in the stock market isn't money you need to pay rent next month. And it's more money that you've set aside for retirement or whatnot. So hopefully you can wait it out. That really is the best thing to do, is not freak out and not try to move things around. Just wait it out. That's true.
That's all. That really is all you can do. So, but let's talk about your book and the things that you've written, because this is a really timely book. And give us an outline of it, if you would.
Well, thank you. So, my latest book is called Seeking Forgiveness, and it's a semi-autobiographical narrative memoir. So it's a little confusing because you hear memoir and you think it's going to be nonfiction, but I did make it fiction. What it's about is about interracial adoption. So I'm a white woman. I adopted a Black son. I had no idea what I was doing. And so the book is about that. But what I did was I had to make parts of it fiction to protect my son and the privacy of my son. So while it's very much based on our life, and there's a lot of vignettes about the mother's perspective of adopting and having an interracial family, so a lot of it did actually happen, and that those parts are nonfiction. But the backstory of my son, his birth family, his history, that's his story to tell. And one day, maybe, he's sort of into this book, and he's been coming home a few times since school started, telling me he wants to be a writer. So my dream is, give him a few years, he'll write his side of the story, and you can get the full picture. But my book, Seeking Forgiveness, is only semi-autobiographical, but it's all about motherhood, interracial adoption, and trying to figure out how to do that in today's society.
In talking with you previously, and we had a couple of conversations, and I was struck by the fact that if you haven't gone, if you haven't done that, if you haven't felt like and gone and adopted somebody that's another another race from another culture and all of that, you might think that what's the big deal? It's like he's born in America, he's an American and stuff like that. But by way of illustration, tell us about your trip to the dentist.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, shocking, surprising, eye-opening sort of stories in the book. But one of them is the first time, this is a true story, the first time I took my son to the dentist. So he was about 5 years old at the time, and it was time to get his first teeth cleaning. So I got the name of a pediatric dentist from a friend. We showed up, we walk in, and the receptionist behind the counter, she sort of slides the glass partition open and looks at us funny, and then slides it shut and goes away. She comes back a few minutes later and she looks us up and down and she says, "Okay, well, I need your papers." And I you mean my insurance card? Here's his insurance card. Here's my insurance card. She's like, no. And she pushes them at me. "No, I need your papers." And I said, "I'm sorry, I really honestly don't know what you're talking about." And she said, "To see the boy, I need proof from his guardian or parent that we can treat him, because we can't treat him without proof that his legal guardian says it's okay." And I'm like, "I'm his mother. I made the appointment." And she's like, "Well, unless you can prove you're his mother, we can't treat him." Well, who brings guardian or adoption or birth certificates to a dentist appointment? Nobody does that. So of course I didn't have them and didn't know what to do, and we had to leave. And so we go in the car, and I'm buckling my son into his seat, and he's like, "Where's my lollipop?" Because I told him that you'd get lollipops at the dentist. And I'm like, "Well, go get some at the pharmacy, just, hold on." And then I get in my seat and I put the car in reverse to back out of the parking spot, and I look over my seat and I make eye contact with my son. And he says to me, "Mom, did we have to leave because I'm Black?" And I said to my son, "No, we had to leave because Mommy's white." And I did that on purpose because I have been working all of these years to make sure he does not blame himself for all of the things that he faces in society, because that's the natural, seems to be, inclination for him to blame himself for these things. And it's been tough to make sure he doesn't internalize it like that.
So if you've thought about having adopting a child, and I highly recommend it, I think it's a really good thing. It takes a long time to be able to do it. Yeah. You're telling me that it took you like a year and a half. You had classes you had to take, and had a bunch of stuff you had to sign and prove that you were a good person and all that stuff. But if you are going down that road and decide you want to go do that, what are the challenges that adopting a black child would have that you wouldn't even think about?
Yeah. Well, no, that's a really good point. I mean, so when my husband and I entered the whole foster system and taking the classes and whatnot, this was before Michael Brown, before George Floyd, before, the term white privilege was really common parlance. And I'll admit, I certainly knew that there would be issues, and I would have to make the effort to sort of understand other cultures and, look out for him. But in all honesty, I as well did not realize all of the different complexities and all the different things that would happen. And it started actually in the classes we took. So I believe foster systems are run per state, so it's probably different in every state. But in Missouri, some of the classes they made you take, it did come up. And we did learn that there are people who don't believe in interracial adoption, and that if they, could make the decision, they would not allow us as white parents to adopt Black children. And I remember the first time I heard that was in these foster classes, and I was shocked a little bit, like, I mean, not even allowed, like, and now I've come to understand it. I think the idea is that if you want to adopt cross-culturally, cross-racially, there is a burden on you to make sure you learn about the other culture and not just take the child and sort of make them just, only be around your culture. So I think interracial adoption is okay and very rewarding, and something, I encourage people to do. But at the same time, I now get it that it's not easy, and it does require a level of effort to be made. Make sure you have friends in the other culture or race. Make sure you have books and art and music. I mean, I had a different interview yesterday, and I was telling her how, like, I had asked friends for more recommendations on, like, hip hop artists that, like, aren't just the big names, so that I could hear more and learn more. I mean, I literally had to just ask and find out about things.
That would be really, really difficult to do, especially if it's a hip hop artist. I couldn't even. And Nathan, I'm sure, knows some hip hop artist names. Oh, he doesn't either.
Not my genre, to be honest.
I couldn't. If Run DMC, I don't know if that's even a guy.
I mean, I felt like I could have named like Kanye and Drake and maybe Eminem, like some big names, but then not other names, not more common things. And like I have a favorite right now, NF, although my son doesn't think NF is as hip hoppy as it should be, but whatever. But yeah, so I had to learn. I mean, I'm not surprised. I had to learn myself.
And did you say NF?
Yeah.
I hope that last word isn't what I think it is.
No. It's just the letters. NF.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I hear hip hop music, and they use a lot of grammar that I don't think that we can say on the radio.
Yes, and actually, that is an issue with my son now. He's 12, and so he got his very first phone at 12. And so he's only had it a few months now. And yeah, he's synced it Bluetooth to my car. So whenever in my car, he now gets to be in charge of the radio through his phone. And I have to say that half the time I make him turn it off because the language is too bad. It's not that I don't like the music. And then we argue because I tell him, I'm like, it's not the music, it's the language is so bad.
Years ago, I did a music show on KKNW, and it was late at night. And there was a hip hop artist, and he sent the CD, and the board operator at the time played the CD. I didn't even understand what the guy was saying, and he said, "Nope, you can't play that. Nope, you can't play that. Nope, can't play that at all." And so it was really a bizarre thing for me to it's a real cultural difference, and although kids today. They seem to like hip hop, and it doesn't matter what their racial makeup is. They tend to like it.
I agree. I mean, when my son has play dates and he has both white and Black friends, whatever the friends are, they all seem to be listening to the same music. And I have to say, he's only 12. My son's very extroverted. He's already gone to 2 concerts. And the first one, he was invited by a white friend, and the white friend's dad was the one who, chaperoned them. I'm trying to remember now. Lil Tecca is who we went to see a concert for. But so yeah, it was white friends who took them. They all are liking this music that we old people trying to figure out.
And we're not even sure it's music, quite frankly. But that's just me, and it's because I grew up in the land of the Beatles and Led Zeppelin and the Rolling Stones and those guys. But I digress.
I like to call it talking in rhythm.
There you go. But I did want to ask you as well, because you are an educator, and you have run into this, I know, and I think you talk about it in your book a little bit, the differences in educational opportunities for predominantly black schools versus predominantly white schools. Yeah. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that was another thing that, again, really before I actually had to face it, I didn't understand. And, part of the reason I wrote this book is because I would tell these stories to friends or relatives, and they'd be like, oh my God, I didn't know that. And, so many people have asked me questions about our lives. So it's sort of like in this book now. But, what ended up happening was right before my son turned 5 and, I needed to enroll him in a kindergarten somewhere. I looked around at the schools and, I was trying to find a majority African-American school that was also top ranked academically. And what I didn't realize is how hard that is to find both of those together. And I went to some of my Black mother friends, and I asked them what they were doing, what schools they were in, because we had a group of actually Black boys that in preschool, pre-K, that we would get together to read and have them read. And so I asked a bunch of these moms, and they were like, well, this is a tough decision we all have to face. And one mom said to me, well, I'm moving and we're going to an all-white district, top of the line school. And we're doing that because, my son's going to be a doctor or a lawyer. So, he needs to just get used to being the only Black kid in the room. So I'm okay with sending him to a school that's all white. He'll come home and, we'll give him the culture we need. Well, I remember thinking that sounds good, but I can't do that because I'm white. If I send him to an all-white school, he comes home to a white family, like how out of place will he feel? So we did end up choosing a school district that it wasn't majority Black, but it was definitely diverse. I mean, I remember over the summer going to the pool and the park in the area and loved how diverse it was. And it wasn't a bad academically ranked school, but it wasn't top either. And so, we had to make that choice. That's where we started off. We didn't actually stay there, but it's a really tough decision. I think, especially for interracial families and again, if you're going to adopt interracially, you should be aware, and not just, send the kid to the local school that's near you if it's all white and not think about it. You have to make a conscious decision between sort of really high ranked academics or a little bit less, and where will they feel out of place? Are they the kind of kid that can handle it or not? I mean, these are tough things that unfortunately society makes us face.
By the way, what is that? What is going on there, Nathan?
Just a little echo. It's fine. It'll go away after like half a second.
Okay. And we're talking about Leah Rachel, and she's written the book Seeking Forgiveness. And you can go to her website, which is leahrachel.com, and it's LeaRachel.com. You can get a look at the book. It's out now, is it not?
Actually, well, you can pre-order an ebook version of it now, but the book actually comes out October 18th. So October 18th.
Very cool. So that's coming right up. So on October 18th, you can go to Amazon and all the major places, and you'll be able to get it there as well. I would think. Is that correct?
Yeah. It should be, at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all those kinds of places.
Awesome. And I think it's going to do really, really well. Now, if you are in our audience and you have got a story, if you are in a blended, what I like to call a blended family, because it's, we're all humans, we're all the same, and whatever pigment our skin is, we have no control over. We only have control over how we act and who we are. But if you've got a blended family and you would like to comment on our conversation today or add to the conversation, then I would be more than happy to take your call. And Nathan's going to give you the numbers.
Our numbers to call into the show are 425-373-5527 or toll free at 1-888-298-5569. Again, 425-373-5527 or 1-888-298-5569. Call us with your questions.
Yes, indeed. If you would like to talk to Leah about her experience, that would just be awesome, because it is quite a unique thing. Now there are other cultural differences that you found out through the course of time that just kind of came up. Can you talk about a few of them?
Yeah, so I do like to say that the book is very much just about motherhood and about adoption in general. It doesn't have to be interracial adoption. One of the other issues that came up for us that was a memorable story had to do with religion, actually. So when my son was about 1 year old, he was just having his 1 year birthday. A really good friend of mine, like that I grew up with, we went to college together. She flew in to come to his birthday party. And we were talking one day, and I, happened to say something about buying Hanukkah presents. My father was actually Roman Catholic, but my mother was Jewish. We celebrated Hanukkah. I mean, very relaxed atmosphere in my house, but we like Hanukkah. Who doesn't like 8 nights of presents?
Exactly.
And so, but I mentioned Hanukkah, and this friend of mine, and again, a close friend, she said, wait. She said, "You're raising your son Jewish?" And she said, "Wasn't his birth mother Christian?" Because his birth mother had left a Bible for him in the hospital. And I said, "Well, yeah, his birth mother was Christian." And she said, "Well, then you have to raise him Christian. You can't raise him Jewish." And I remember I was just so taken aback. Like, one, I didn't understand how that was supposed to work, how I was supposed to raise a child of mine in a religion that I wasn't. But two, it made me realize how other people view us very differently than I see adoption as permanent, as identical to flesh and blood birth giving as you can get. I mean, there's no going back. He's my family. He's like, mine, and integrated into our family as much as possible. I mean, my point being, if you can't imagine yourself saying to another family that is a birth family, "Why don't you raise a kid a different religion?" then you shouldn't think that's appropriate to say to me. And this was a close friend. So it was just another one of those, people can you can know going in that adoption is a little more complex, and I'm sure other adoptive families out there have stories like this as well, but it's just shocking when it happens.
I was just thinking about that, and there was a famous comedian and an actor. His name is Sammy Davis Jr. Now, if you're not of a certain age, you have no idea who Sammy Davis Jr. was.
Oh no, Nathan, that's so sad.
I know, is it sad? Nathan, do you have any idea who Sammy Davis Jr. was?
Just a little bit. I mean, familiar with the name, but like as far as the song he wrote, I can't really tell you. Fantastic artist, though.
Candyman. Anyway, I digress. and he was Jewish, and was so it's not like it's not culturally acceptable to be a Jewish individual. It has more to do with, and I could just see you walking into a Christian church and them saying, "Welcome, how are you?" And well, hi, I'm fine, I'm Jewish. And they say, "Oh, we're going to convert you," So I don't know how you would do that with a child.
Yeah, it was just weird. And yeah, I do realize, like you're saying, there aren't very many, or it doesn't seem like there's very many African Americans that are Jewish, but I've since learned, I mean, they're Jews of color. And like the brother on the Blackish show, he was in the original Hamilton cast, he's Jewish. And oh my God, Tiffany Haddish, she just had her own bat mitzvah. So I mean, every time there's a Jew of color that does something Jewish, my son and I are on it.
Well, and it's great, and your son is doing well. Mm-hmm. He's older than 5 now, so I'm not going to say how old he is, because that's for him to say when he turns. As a matter of fact, when one of these days in 5 or 6 or 10 years from now, I'd love to have him on to talk about his story and what's going on with him.
I sometimes I tell him after I have interviews that one day people are going to want to meet you, maybe, or have you on, and he's in a phase where he likes to tell jokes and prank and stuff, and he's like, "Oh, can I tell jokes? Can I?" He won't want to talk about the book or anything like that. He'll want to try to tell you really bad jokes.
I can understand that. We at that age, that's what they do. And it's really great. By the way, again, we're talking with Leah Rachel, and you can give us a call and talk to her about she's raising she's adopted an African American boy, and so there are challenges that go along with that. But I think as we continue on down our evolutionary path, that's going to become more and more, and blended families are more and more happening all the time. In fact, when we come back, I'm going to take a little break. When we come back, I'm going to ask you about the talk. No, not that talk, the other talk that only parents of an African-American boy seem to have. And so I want you to stew on that for a minute and a half, and we'll be right back. You're listening to KKNW 1150 AM, and this is Positive Talk Radio, and we'll be right back.
Do you believe in the combination of brain more than words communicate? You can with flowers. Your custom boutique floral studio in Bothell, Washington is anaturaldesign.com, connecting you to nature through the language of flowers. Where your people are is where our flowers are beautiful. Your success is our goal. Now through New Year's Eve, here's your exclusive bonus for being our appreciated listener. Type in promo code Positive Talk Radio at checkout to receive $20 off your order. Our gift to you for being here with us today. anaturaldesign.com.
My name is Kevin McDonald, and I created Positive Talk Radio on KKNW 1150 AM. And if you like what we're doing here, evolving ideas one conversation at a time, we have so much more to offer you on positivetalkradio.net. Over 160 podcasts and growing. Great positive guests and many thoughts and ideas designed to help you and your family live life just a little bit better. You can even contribute to our work by becoming a member and receiving lots of cool stuff. Please check it out. I created PTR because now's the time for positive change, and nothing else matters. Again, visit positivetalkradio.net, and thanks for listening. And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Positive Talk Radio. It's Friday, and we've got a great author with us today who's got a great story. Her name is Leah Rachel, and the name of the book is Seeking Forgiveness. It comes out in the middle of October, but we get to have her talk about it first, and it's really cool. And I teased it prior to the break, and so I guess we need to talk about it now. But when did you discover that there was going to be an additional talk that you need to have with your son at one point? And I'm not talking about the birds and the bees. I'm talking about the other one.
Yeah. Well, let me just say that is a great question. And again, that is the kind of question that I get from people who are really curious about interracial adoption. I get questions about taking care of my son's hair and about the talk and about school and religion, some of the other things we talked about. So again, if you're one of those people who has any questions on some of these issues, the book really is a good way to read up on all of these issues. But focusing on your question, the talk, and how Black boys need to behave in front of the police. So this is extremely important. It's something you must talk to your son about, and probably earlier than certainly white mothers, especially, maybe think. I mean, the idea is, you still see your son as young and like a baby and cute, when to society he's getting older and bigger all the time. So initially, my feeling was to sort of let it organically come up. And I'll let you know that, from the time he was very young, 5, 6, 7, we would watch the news, and there's a sort of famous incident here in St. Louis where just a mile from our house, at an IHOP, a bunch of high school boys had lunch or dinner, I think it was, and they left, and the police immediately arrested them for not paying, even though they did, and they just couldn't find the receipt. And it was, so my son and I were watching it, and it came up. So the first thing is, anything that comes up organically, I will talk to my son about. But I will say, I did notice in some of these early talks that my son would sort of listen, but I couldn't tell if he was taking me seriously. I mean, he was a little too young for eye rolls, but I wasn't sure he took me seriously. So I literally, and this is where I say, it really is important to sort of make the effort and make friends cross-culturally. I went to a good Black male friend of mine, and I said, you know what, my son needs the talk, but he needs it from a Black man. He needs to see it from somebody who can say, this happened to me, and this is, how I react when I get stopped by the police. And so I actually enlisted help and had somebody else talk to him besides just myself. And we continue to talk about it every time it comes up, which sadly it still does periodically.
Was he aware of George Floyd and what happened with him? And did he actually see it on TV?
He did not watch like the 9-minute video or anything like that. But when protests happened, we went to one together. Yes. I actually have a beautiful photo somebody else took of my son. You know, we walked the protest we went to, I don't remember, 2-3 miles, whatever it was. But at the very end, when we got there, you know, everybody knelt down and, you know, raised their arm. And somebody took a great photo of my son with his My Life Matters sign in front of him in that pose. And it's just a gorgeous photo. I've got it enlarged, like on our wall now. So I took him to these things. And again, he was young though. And so he went and he's like aware. It's so hard to know with children how much they're really processing, how much they're just going along. Cause you're like, come on, we're going for a walk. So he's been, my thing with him always is I constantly say to him, you can ask me anything. I'll talk about anything. And I think he's sick of me saying that, but yeah, so he's been aware of everything. It's hard to know how much he's fully processed, but he's definitely aware of everything.
How do you feel? Well, let me preface this by saying that I have a good friend who is part of a blended family. Mm-hmm. She's white, her husband is black, mm-hmm. and they have 2 interracial kids. Mm-hmm. And the older one is 21, and he's mm-hmm. driving now. And so he has her number on speed dial and is required to call anytime that the blue lights come on behind him if he's had a traffic because every time he leaves the house, she's scared to death that something is going to happen to him. I can't imagine living that way. That must be, and I know that you're preparing for those days because he's not driving yet. Yeah. But them's days is coming pretty quick.
Well, I can tell you, there's another episode that I describe in the book. I call it my Walmart chapter, but an incident where around, Halloween time, which around now, we went to Walmart and to buy a whole bunch of candy and stuff. And again, it was just me and my son. I'm white, he's black. We certainly don't look like or anything. And, I'm checking out, buying everything. And when we're just about done, he sort of grabs a bag of Kit Kats and walks ahead of me, like opening them. And because he's a little bit ahead of me and he's just like opening this bag and starting to eat it, he gets stopped by security and they say, you're stealing that. And pretty swiftly, I don't know, like, I didn't even know this until I saw it. Like as you're leaving Walmart between the 2, like the doors that open and shut, it looks like a wall, but it's a security center with a door that opens and they can pretty swiftly grab you and stick you in that door. And then you're gone. There's no window or anything. Grab my son, take him behind the door. And I'm like, what is going on? And the thing is, they don't realize I'm his mother. So I'm like, where are you taking my son? And the woman who's still out with the walkie-talkie is like, don't worry, something happened. You can go home now. I'm like, no, my son, what are you doing? And it took like a few minutes to explain to this person that I paid for that. Here's the receipt. I am that person's mother. Give me my son. And so, you mentioned like being on speed dial. You can be there and not even be able to protect him. And you have to convince people that you're his mother. And it's like, it makes me crazy. And, for those few minutes, he's behind that door, closed off in a security room, being accused of something he didn't do. I don't know what's happening to him. And you read the book to find out more of what happens. But
there's a teaser for you. Well, that would be horrific. That would be because when you think about it, a lot of us don't have to deal with any of that. But it would be a really horrific thing to have to go through on a day-to-day basis. I want to talk to you too about when you decided you were going to adopt, and tell us that story and also the foster care situation that you were in over a period of time that before you were actually able to adopt him.
So I'm not 100% sure which story you mean, the story about like why we adopted, or once we were in there, like the whole checklist and all that other thing that they gave us.
Oh, the checklist, and also that you became his foster parents.
Yeah.
And for a period of time.
So, okay. So let me a little bit back up until about, so one, let me just start by saying that most people assume that I adopted because of fertility issues, and that's actually not the case. My husband and I were a little bit on the fence of becoming parents at all. And then a friend of mine, I was with some other women, and a woman was talking about foster care and fostering to adopt. And it was like a light went out. Like I didn't even think of it as an option. And another reason for writing this book is I feel like so many people, and there are a lot of infertility issues, but so many people don't even think about the foster system and all the kids that are there to adopt. And myself as well, the minute it sort of like I became aware of it. I mean, I guess it sounds silly that I hadn't even thought about it. I was like, oh, I'm no longer on the fence. If becoming a mother isn't just about like me and my life, it's also about the child. I want to do this. And I came home and my husband was on board and we signed up. Now the foster system is, again, I think different in every state. In St. Louis, one of the first things that happens when you're first signing up and taking the classes, they give you this like 2-page long sheet with lots of different characteristics. And you have to check mark like, yes, I'm willing to adopt, or no, I'm not willing to adopt. And they tell you to please be honest, like you're not doing us or the child any favors if you just like for politically correct reasons say, sure, give me anything. And I will say that most of the things that you have to check or not check are medical conditions, Down syndrome and autism and some other things like that. And I will admit I was very hesitant about checking some of those. I was actually born very sick. I grew up in a hospital for a number of years. I have a little bit of PTSD. I sometimes get panic attacks when I go to a hospital. So I remember thinking, I don't know if I can be a good mother to somebody who's in the hospital all the time. So I agonized over those. But then when it came to the racial characteristics, I'm like, that's fine. I just checked all those. Like I can take anything. The foster system is about fostering initially. Like you can't go in and say, I want to adopt. I mean, you can do that, but they usually roll their eyes at you because as it should be, the primary goal of the foster system is reunification with birth families. So if a child can't be reunified with the birth family, then they're open for adoption. But it is true. So I understand why not everybody adopts. So I feel like I want everybody to be aware of the option, but I understand why not everybody adopts the foster system, because it will probably take a little while. Adoption isn't the first goal. The first goal usually is you're a foster parent for at least usually about a year and a half. And if reunification isn't possible for whatever reason, and there can be many reasons, then the child is open for adoption.
And in this case, the birth parents or the birth mother is not capable or available or for whatever reason, mm-hmm. and isn't capable. And is there a chance that she could come back at one point and say,
yeah,
I'm back?
So it's my understanding in the late 1990s, I think it's like around 1995, 1996. While it is per state, almost across the country, a lot of very important adoption laws were passed. So it used to be that before these laws were passed in most of the states in the late 1990s, a child in the foster system could really languish there because you're trying to reunify with the birth parents or mother or father. And so if they're starting to make progress, like getting a job or getting a safe home, then they get more time. But then maybe they can backtrack and something happens and they lose their job or something else unfortunate. And then, it doesn't. So there were stories of children who were never adopted and were being, for 6, 9 or more years in this sort of limbo. And people realize it's just really not healthy for them. So Missouri, as well as, and again, I'm not an expert in like the legal or anything, but it's my understanding many, many states in the late 1990s passed a law that makes it so children can't be in limbo forever. And in Missouri, which I know a little more about, it's 15 months. So birth parents get 15 months. If after 15 months, they have not made adequate progress to show that there's good reason to reunify with their children, then time's up. And they have a termination of parental rights. Now, hopefully it doesn't have to get there. Again, I don't want to talk about what happened with us because that's my son's story. But in Missouri, it's usually about 15 months that there's termination of parental rights if there hasn't been reunification, and then you get to adopt.
Now you've been in the foster care system, and you've adopted your son, and things have changed this year in many states around the country where abortion is no longer legal, and so do you think, from your experience, that there will be more children to adopt, or the pool is going to grow because more babies are going to come to term?
I mean, that's a very interesting question. I mean,
and I don't know if anybody has the answer to it right now, but
I mean, I guess I imagine some, you would like to think that, there's some states where it's still legal. There's, over-the-counter medicine, but, get other options. It's just been made more difficult. And whenever there's, back to my economist, whenever there's a transaction cost, right, or a sand in the gear, a difficulty, then it's going to, affect the outcome. So I think no matter what, yes, probably the answer to your question is yes, for sure. And probably there'll be more children, especially to lower income, women who can't make the trips out to other states and whatnot. And so, there's probably going to be more. Yeah.
So that's one of the reason I bring that up is your book is very timely, because if there are more lower income, and lower income can be white or black, but in a lot of cases it's black women, and they can't get out, and so they bring a baby to term but can't take care of it properly, then there's the real possibility that it's going to be there for adoption. So for people to understand what it's like to and some of the pitfalls of raising an African American child, it really is a good idea.
Yeah. And again, pitfalls, and let me also say joys. I mean, there's both that come, but I do want to say, I'm glad you brought this up. And especially, you mentioned my previous book, The Other Shakespeare, which imagines, what would have happened if Shakespeare had been born a woman. I will tell you, while I like that book and it got good reviews, it is depressing because there's not really a good outcome to a woman trying to do her own thing in 1500s London. So buy it if you want. I will tell you, it doesn't end all that happily. Now, having said that, Seeking Forgiveness, this book, one of the things that I like about it is I think it is very gut-wrenching. It's very emotional. There's definitely highs and lows and shockers in the book. But I will say that I believe it ends on a hopeful note. I believe it ends on the strength, it's again, from the mother's perspective. I feel like the main thing is it's about motherhood, and it's about the love of a mother for her son, how strong that bond can be, and how it can get a family through almost anything.
That is incredible. And by the way, your first book, The Other Shakespeare, did you know, Nathan, that, women have moved from where they were then, but did you know, Nathan, that in the 1500s, if you were in a play and you played a woman, you were a man?
Yeah, men got to kiss each other.
He doesn't want to answer that. Look it up. Women were not allowed to be on stage during Shakespeare's time. So they had men that played the parts of women. He's feverishly Googling it because he wants to make sure that I'm being accurate here.
Well, and just think, if they didn't let women play the parts, they definitely didn't let women write the plays. And in my book, I'm trying to have her write the plays and come up with the stories. And of course, they're like, "That's interesting, nice lady. Do you want to just sleep with me instead?"
and be a director or be a writer, and to put it all together. Women were not allowed to do any of that stuff. And of course, it's been 100 years now since you got the right to vote. Thank goodness that you did, and stuff. So you've improved over time, and that was my point. It's gotten better over time, but it ain't where it needs to be yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm realizing there's a theme to my books. Who knows what my next one will be? That it is about trying to break down barriers and hopefully, see how we can make the world a little bit of a better place, but not, shying away from how difficult some things are still, you know.
And that the interracial thing, and with especially black young men, It is very difficult right now because they are stereotyped in a certain way, even if they are intelligent and can speak well and can act appropriately, and they're not off the rails, because you can be black or white and be off the rails, but
I mean, yeah, and I can tell you stories. I mean, again, I got, more and more fun stories. I mean, my son went through a phase when he was about 10 or 11 where anytime I asked him to do his homework, his response to me was, "You don't know what it's like to be black." And I would say, "Baby, you are right. I have no idea what it's like to be black, but you still have to do your homework." But it was weird how, and it's in the first, it's funny because I was waiting for the time when he said to me, "You're not my real mother," because all adoptive mothers wait for that moment. That's going to happen. Right. And so that one I was like ready for. I wasn't ready for the "you don't know what it's like to be black, mom." And again, and he almost would say it with a joke because he knew he was saying it just to try to get out of things. And so, I think my response was, "Yes, you are right. I don't, but brush your teeth. It's time for bed." So, eventually this phase stopped. He doesn't do it anymore. But I guess the point is, you have to figure out how to be okay with different outbursts. All kids are going to have outbursts, and all kids are going to say different things, and it can be unnerving but hilarious too. It's motherhood. This is motherhood.
And it's a beautiful thing that you're doing, and the book Seeking Forgiveness is coming out in the middle of October, and go pick it up, and it can really be a blueprint for you to come up with an idea of what it's like. And do you feel like now after this many years that you've kind of got it figured out and got it all together and you're good to go, or do you still have more to learn?
That's a good question. Yeah, I would say, I so don't know what I'm doing still on some levels. I mean, I will say, and I've said this before, I think personally the hardest thing about motherhood is you genuinely really never know if you're doing it right. So, like I said earlier, I got him a phone when he was 12. He was the last kid of his friend. Most of his friends got their phones at 10. I had no idea what was the right age. There's no guidebook, or, you can look up on page 12 of, some index, like when to give a kid his phone, or, what do you do the first time he steals a pack of gum from the gas station? I mean, I did that as a kid, in all honesty. I stole packs of gum from the gas station, but how do you respond to that? And, what do you do when your kid says to you, "I hate my life"? There's no good answer. You can hope you do the right thing. How do you choose what school to go to? We talked about schooling. As a mother, I've agonized over these things and dealt with them. And I think the hardest part is that you simply never know if you actually did it right or not. And you never will know. And you can only and that's why, the book is titled Seeking Forgiveness, because the mother tries her best. She makes mistakes and is always learning to answer your question. And you just got to cross your fingers and hope their therapy bill isn't too high when they get older.
Well, we quite frankly, we all need therapy when we get there.
I know.
But it's amazing that you're doing as well as you are. And I can tell by just talking with you that your heart's in the right place. You're a hell of a mother, and you're working every day. But it kind of, I thought it was kind of funny when he was saying, "You don't know what it's like to be black." He was actually beginning to use that against you.
Yeah.
And then you were telling him to go do his homework and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think he did do the "you're not my real mother," but he only did that once, because again, I was like. And I think I even said, I'm like, "Oh, I've been waiting for you to say that." I was like, it took longer than I thought. I was like, "You're right, I'm not. Now, what do you want for dinner?" It was again over something, really minor. And because I didn't take it in a devastating manner, "Oh, but I try, or I am your," he realized that one, he can bring these things up and talk to them and joke with me about them, or just bring them up, and I'm willing to hear them without yelling at him or being devastating. But I have to say, it neutralizes it too when you just agree with them. You're like, "Yeah, I'm not, but I am here, and I love you, and you need to tell me if you want macaroni and cheese or fish sticks. So what is it?"
Oh, to raise children, I'm done with mine, and I forgot more about raising them than you're bringing me back to a bunch of stuff when you have a child and stuff. It makes it can be really challenging. And you're right. If it's your first one, you don't know. If it's your second one, you think you know, and if you're the third one, you really don't care. So I fell into
that's what I've heard.
I fell into the third one category. So by the time I got there, they were like, "Oh, you fell and hit your head? Oh, shut up and get up.
Right.
You're fine." I'm bleeding though, but nah, you're fine.
Too funny.
And you're the first one. Everything's brand new and it's different and it's real and all that kind of stuff. So
and I'm always trying to do my best. I will say one of the other things is I've learned that you try to correct the things that happened wrong, and when you were a child, you're like, I'm going to do that better. And what I've learned is that what were your issues are not your child's issues. So like I had a single working mom. She would always like forget to pick me up. Like I have memories of being in the old days. If you were late being picked up from like aftercare, they kicked you out. You sat on the curb and like watched the cars go by. And I visually remember watching the cars go by, wondering if my mother would ever pick me up. So I remember saying, my kid will never be the last one to be picked up anywhere. So when he started aftercare, I'd get there like an hour early. I'd show up and he'd be like, oh, Mom, I'm not done playing with Legos. Can you leave and come back? And he literally, my son's I think I said he's an extrovert. It took me a few months to realize he wants to be the last kid there. Like it dawned on me that like my issues are not his issues, and he probably has issues, and there are probably things I'm doing wrong, but I don't know what they are because they're not mine.
Well, he was having a great time, and by the way, if you're the last one there, you get your pick of any toy you want.
Yeah. And you get to, apparently what I didn't realize is you get to take your Lego builds and like hide them until the next. So, because if you leave and you leave your little Lego building or whatever, other kids will come and take apart what you build and use those bricks. But if you're the last one, you can like take your bricks and like put it on a shelf so that when you get there the next day, nobody's taken apart what you've built.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah.
Kids are pretty smart these days. So
they are.
Congratulations. And by the way, we haven't talked much about your husband, but he is on board with all this and he's a great father to as well, I would assume.
Yeah. For all I know, he is listening right now. I did give him the link.
Oh, good. Hi, Dad.
Yeah. I mean, I do have the kind of husband who pretty much just lets me make a lot of the major decisions, but he's a happy wife, happy life is what he says. So he's a good guy.
And exactly right. And my motto always was, apparently it didn't work out all that well because we're no longer together. But if you do what you're told, sometimes you get to do what you want.
Ooh, I like that.
I figured you would.
I'm going to have to say that back to him. I got to remember that. That's good.
Yes, yes, indeed. So, by the way, we've just got a couple of minutes left, and I would like you to take the time we have left and talk to our audience about anything that you would like them to know.
Yeah, well, so I would say that, if you've got any interest in the books or any questions about interracial adoption or want to see any of my other writings, I have a blog, I have writing projects. Again, my website's the best place to go to find the books and then the links to buy them and other things. So again, it's www.learachel.com, and that's one word, LEARACHEL. And I have to say, like, I'm willing to also even just answer questions. So, this past Mother's Day, I wrote a piece that got published in some local newspapers in St. Louis about interracial adoption. And I got some emails, I got handwritten letters from people, mostly from other interracial families saying, oh my God, thank you. Somebody's finally writing about what it's actually like not, I had one woman who said, I've been, for 50 years, I have an interracial family. I've never seen a newspaper article where people actually talk about what it's like. So my larger point is you can feel free to contact me. Leah@leahrachel.com is my email. If anybody has questions about interracial adoption or anything, hopefully no hate mail, but send it along. Right? I'm open for anything. But leahrachel.com, www.leahrachel.com.
You haven't got any hate mail about this, have you?
No, not yet.
Well, forward it to me if you get any hate mail. I'll deal with it. I'll deal with them. That's just not appropriate. And it's been great having you here, and
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. And it's such a timely issue because go ahead.
Well, I mean, thank you for having me. Like, I do think it's something that people are very curious about, and have questions, and sometimes are afraid to ask, sometimes aren't. So thank you for having the topic and the book Seeking Forgiveness on your show, because I do think people are very curious. So hopefully this will help answer a lot of questions people have.
I just can't imagine having when you went to the dentist and they said, "Where's your papers?" You thought you were in East Germany or something.
Well,
you know?
I tell people, what are there like white women around St. Louis stealing young Black children and taking them for free dental care? I mean, it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, I reported them to the Missouri Dental Board to end that story, but it didn't go anywhere.
Well, that's life. We've been again talking about racial adoption, and Leah Rachel, get the book Seeking Forgiveness. And I want to thank everybody for being here. We're going to be back at 9 a.m. on Monday, and please be kind to one another, because each other's all we got.